A development surfaced this weekend in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and it did not bring clarity. It brought something else entirely. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has been without her medication for 7 days, without her hearing aids for 7 days. And somewhere out there, in or around Tucson, Arizona, nobody in a position of authority can tell you where she is or what happened to her. That is where this case stands. And this weekend, instead of answers, investigators did something that raised more questions than anything that has come before it. Law enforcement activity around this case has been surging and stalling for days. On, off, signals firing and then going quiet. And then this weekend, Saturday night into Sunday, something shifted. The kind of shift that does not happen in investigations that are going nowhere. Nighttime raids on family properties. Flash photography firing through deliberately darkened rooms. Federal agents on day 8 pulling covers off underground tanks at the crime scene and reaching down into whatever sits beneath the surface. Alleged ransom demands with a Monday deadline. And sitting above all of it, the President of the United States, speaking from Air Force One, said he is not talking about a search anymore. He is talking about a solution, something definitive, something he believes is coming soon. That is not routine. That is not standard investigative language. That is a president who has been briefed on something the public has not been shown. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what happened this weekend, what it means for this investigation, and what questions the people responsible for finding Nancy Guthrie still have not answered, and why that silence is a problem. If you believe Nancy Guthrie deserves answers, share this video right now. Subscribe to Justice Over Everything. Uncover the truth. Demand justice. And it does not stop there. While all of that was unfolding, the raids, the federal activity, the signals firing in every direction, Savannah Guthrie stood in front of a camera alongside her siblings and delivered a message to the public. Not a press update, not a statement about the search, a message directed at someone specific, and the words she used, or the words that were chosen for her, stopped people cold the moment they heard them. We receive your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will obey. We will obey. Read that again. 3 words. From the daughter of a missing 84-year-old woman. Delivered on camera, publicly, while federal agents are raiding family homes and reaching into underground tanks a few miles away. We will obey. Something about those 3 words does not sound like grief. It does not sound like a daughter pleading from the gut. It sounds like something else, something deliberate. We will come back to exactly what that is, because when we do, it will reframe everything you thought you understood about this case. But first, Saturday night. Saturday night, 10 o'clock. 4 miles from the home where Nancy Guthrie was last seen alive. 3 unmarked white vehicles, no markings, no identification. They rolled up to Annie Guthrie's property, Annie being Nancy's daughter, without announcement and without any public explanation of why they were there or what they were looking for. Multiple Pima County Sheriff's deputies stepped out and walked inside. The family was not present. Reporters stationed outside documented what they could from the street. Brian Anton from News Nation, Michael Ruiz from Fox News. Veteran journalists who have covered active investigations for years. Both of them would later say that what unfolded over the next 3 hours was unlike anything they expected to see, because nighttime is typically when things go quiet on location. Security rotates in. Watches are posted. The real investigative work waits for daylight. That is standard. That is how it works. That is not what happened here. Not at Annie Guthrie's home. Not on this night. What those reporters observed, Standing outside in the dark while investigators worked inside is what the people running this investigation have still not explained. What they saw started before anyone went inside. One reporter described what appeared to be an unusually large, thin case, silver or white, being carried through the front door of Annie Guthrie's home. Whether it was a case or a folding table, the observers outside could not say for certain. But it was large, it was deliberate, and it went in before anything else happened. Then the lights went off, not because the power cut out, not by accident. Investigators were moving through that home in complete darkness. Lights flickered briefly toward the rear of the property, then cut, then nothing. And then came the flashbulbs, bursts of light, firing repeatedly through rooms that investigators were clearly keeping dark on purpose. Not one flash, not two, repeatedly, through unlit rooms, while reporters stood outside and watched and could not explain what they were seeing. While investigators inside offered nothing. 3 hours, a darkened home, flash photography in rooms where the lights had been deliberately switched off. Something was happening inside Annie Guthrie's home that night. Something that required darkness to work. And here is what makes that matter. Seasoned crime reporters who have covered investigations like this for years will tell you that when law enforcement moves through a building in deliberate darkness, lights off, kept off, on purpose, there is typically one explanation. Luminol. It is a chemical compound used in forensic investigations. It reacts with hemoglobin, and when it does, it produces a faint, luminescent glow, but only in complete darkness, which is precisely why the lights have to be off when it is applied. The flash photography is consistent with documenting that reaction. The deliberate darkness is the procedure, that is, the explanation observers immediately reached for when they saw what was happening inside Annie Guthrie's home. But then something did not add up. Not a single officer entering or leaving that property was wearing Tyvek suits. No forensic protective gear of any kind. Luminol testing demands full contamination precautions. No protective suits going in. No large evidence preparation equipment. Nothing that would indicate a standard forensic procedure was being prepared. So if it was not luminol, what was happening in those darkened rooms for 3 hours? That question has not been answered, and what came next made it worse. When at least one deputy finally emerged from Annie Guthrie's home, reporters identified the Pima County Sheriff's insignia on the uniform. The deputy was wearing blue latex gloves and carrying what appeared to be a brown paper bag. Evidence bags take many forms. Some look exactly like brown paper bags. A gloved deputy, a darkened home, 3 hours of flash photography, 10 o'clock at night, a brown paper bag that nobody explained. The officers left without a word. Not one comment to the reporters assembled outside. Not one statement. Brian Anton and Michael Ruiz documented what they could from the street and pieced together what was visible from the outside. The people responsible for finding Nancy Guthrie walked out of her daughter's home in the middle of the night and said nothing to the people waiting for answers. Then came Sunday. Agents located what appeared to be a large underground tank behind Nancy Guthrie's own home. Behind the pool, behind the garden. They removed a cover roughly 2 feet in diameter and began probing downward into whatever sat beneath the surface with a long implement. Federal investigators. Day 8. Physically reaching into the ground at the home of a missing woman. Properties in this neighborhood are not connected to a municipal sewage system. Each home runs on its own individual septic tank. A water delivery truck had been spotted near Nancy's property earlier that week, raising questions about whether agents were probing a cistern, a well, or something else entirely. In 2019, federal agents searched septic tanks at a suspect's property looking for Jennifer Dillow, a missing mother of 5 who was never found. And here is what makes the timing impossible to ignore. 7 days earlier, the sheriff publicly stated there was no need to continue searching the immediate area around Nancy Guthrie's home. 7 days. And now agents were back at that exact same property. Lifting covers, reaching down. Someone decided they were wrong. Nobody has explained who made that call or what changed. And that is where the picture starts to shift. Because while investigators were raiding homes and probing underground tanks, another problem was building in the official record. A foundational one. The original account the sheriff had been telling publicly was this. Around 11 o'clock Sunday morning, the morning Nancy's disappearance was discovered, a friend from her church noticed she hadn't shown up for services. The family was notified. They went to the house. They looked around, and they called 911 approximately an hour later. That hour drew immediate scrutiny. Blood had reportedly been visible at the front entrance. An hour is a long time when you find something like that. Then the timeline changed. At a subsequent press conference, the sheriff presented a completely different sequence. The family arrived at Nancy's home at 11:57 a.m. Called 911 just 6 minutes later at 12:03 p.m. The controversial hour, the gap that had generated intense public debate, simply vanished from the official account. Legal analysts were precise. The time at which a missing person is discovered is among the most foundational facts in any investigation. It does not shift by a full hour due to miscommunication. That is not how these things work. This was not a clerical error. A foundational fact was revised. Someone made that decision, and the public has not been given an explanation for why. If that matters to you, share this video. This case demands attention. Subscribe to Justice Over Everything. Uncover the truth. Demand justice, which is where this case gets harder to explain. The original account said a friend from Nancy's church noticed she hadn't shown up for services that Sunday morning. That friend alerted the family. The family went to the house. Here is the problem. Nancy Guthrie had not physically attended church since the COVID pandemic. She watched services via live stream, a one-way broadcast that viewers could access from home, a broadcast the church could not see back. There is no mechanism by which a church friend could notice Nancy's absence from a one-way stream. The account that started this entire timeline has not been adequately explained. The 911 call from that morning is sealed. One revised timeline. One church notification story that does not hold up. One sealed call. These are not separate loose ends. They are a cluster. And that cluster sits directly at the center of how the discovery of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance has been officially explained. Nobody has answered it. And then there is this. Think about what Savannah Guthrie's video actually was. Standing alongside her siblings, she delivered a message. Not to the public, but to someone specific. She spoke of receiving a message, of begging for her mother's return, of this being the only path to peace, of obedience. 3 words landed harder than everything else she said. We will obey. Former FBI agents and hostage negotiation specialists reviewed that video. What they found was not a family speaking from grief. They found phrases hitting very specific professional marks. The kind of carefully constructed communication law enforcement helps families build when they are actively negotiating with a potential abductor. We will obey is not how a daughter speaks from the gut. That is not organic grief language. That is a script, shaped with a purpose, delivered because someone or something made it necessary. Consider what that means. Savannah Guthrie, standing with her siblings, reading words that may have been constructed by the FBI, directed at someone who may be holding her 84-year-old mother right now. The question nobody can yet answer. Is there actually someone on the other end receiving that message? Because there is another layer to this. A trial attorney with 3 decades of experience noted what he called an operational contradiction at the heart of the alleged kidnapping. Kidnappers depend on privacy and silence. They do not choose victims whose disappearances trigger wall-to-wall national media coverage, FBI mobilization, and presidential statements. Kidnapping the mother of a Today Show anchor is, from a pure operational standpoint, almost impossibly counterproductive if anonymity is the goal. But that argument does not close the question. It opens a harder one. If this is not a kidnapping, then what is the explanation nobody is saying out loud? According to reporting that was briefly published and then removed by a local Tucson television station, the alleged kidnappers set a demand of $6 million in Bitcoin, due by 5 o'clock Monday afternoon. A prior deadline, the previous Thursday, had carried a $4 million figure. The jump after a missed deadline is consistent with ransom escalation. It is also consistent with opportunistic fraud, someone watching the coverage, calibrating their demands, a predatory scam built on a family's worst nightmare. Whether the demand is real or manufactured, a Monday deadline now exists, and that is only part of what investigators reportedly found. Step back and look at everything happening in this case simultaneously. Surveillance footage being pulled from businesses along the route between Nancy's home and Annie's. Underground tanks physically probed at the crime scene. Flash photography inside a family home in complete darkness. Private security retrieving mail from Nancy's mailbox wearing gloves. Deputies visiting neighboring properties. Searches continuing in multiple directions at once. And through all of it, the Pima County Sheriff continues to publicly state that no suspects, no persons of interest, and no vehicles of interest have been identified, while acknowledging that not everything being discovered is shared with the public. All of this, and the official answer is still nothing. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, 7 days without her medication, 7 days without her hearing aids, 7 days without the daily rhythms that kept her connected to the people who love her. For 7 days, this woman has been somewhere, and the system built to find her has not been able to say where. And then there is what the president said. From Air Force One, the President of the United States said he is working toward a solution. Not a search, a solution. Something definitive, something he believes is coming soon. Think about that word. Solution. A president does not use that word in a missing person case unless someone has briefed him on something the public has not been shown. A Monday deadline looms, whether it belongs to a real kidnapper or someone feeding off this family's worst nightmare. That answer has not arrived yet, and Nancy Guthrie is still out there. The people responsible for answering these questions have not answered them. Not the timeline. Not the church notification that does not hold up. Not what happened inside that darkened home for 3 hours on Saturday night. Not what agents found when they reached into the ground at Nancy Guthrie's property on day 8. Not who is behind the ransom demands, and not what the President of the United States knows that the rest of us do not. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 7 days. She is 84 years old. She deserves answers. Her family deserves answers. And the system that is supposed to provide those answers has a great deal left to explain. If you have any information about Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. The reward in this case currently exceeds $1.2 million. This case is not over, and it will not stop being covered here until there are answers. Share this video. Like it. Subscribe to Justice Over Everything. Every share keeps this case in front of someone who might know something. Every view is one more demand for accountability. Uncover the truth. Demand justice.